In 2012, the American economy collapses. Unemployment hits an all-time high, and crime rates skyrocket out of control. The prison system becomes overwhelmed, so private corporations take over all correctional facilities to run them for profit. Terminal Island Penitentiary starts streaming cage fights live on the internet, where prisoners fight to the death, becoming a huge hit with audiences. However, viewers eventually grow bored and demand something more extreme. That's how the Death Race is born, a brutal show where inmates race each other to the death in modified cars, with the winner earning their freedom. In today's race, only 2 cars remain, one driven by masked inmate Frankenstein and his navigator, Case, and the other by Frank's longtime rival, Machine Gun Joe. Both are close to the finish line and ready to do whatever it takes to win. But for some reason, the weapons in Frank's car stop working. Thinking quickly, Frank releases the car's back shield, which hits Joe, giving him a brief advantage. However, Joe isn't done yet and still has the upper hand. Case realizes Joe will destroy them and wants to bail, but Frank refuses to let Joe win. Case ejects herself from the car just as Frank crosses the finish line, moments before Joe shoots, causing Frank's car to explode. Some days later, industrial worker and ex-convict Jensen Ames learns the steel mill he works at is shutting down, and they aren't paying the workers what they're owed. As tensions rise, anti-riot police arrive and begin beating the workers for the slightest provocation. Seeing his co-workers hurt, Jensen jumps into the fray and fights back against the cops. By the time he gets home that night, it's late. After greeting his wife, Jensen checks on his baby upstairs, unaware that a masked intruder is breaking into the house to kill his wife. When Jensen returns downstairs, the man knocks him out, places the murder weapon in Jensen's hand, and leaves, making a shooting gesture with his gloved hand. Jensen wakes up moments later to find the police arresting him for his wife's murder. 6 months later, Jensen is transferred to Terminal Island Prison, where he is greeted by guard Ulrich. Ulrich sprays him with freezing water, allows another guard to hit him, and throws him into a cell with 3 other prisoners who plan to attack him. Later, Ulrich comes to check on Jensen, hoping to see him beaten, but Jensen is a skilled fighter and has knocked all his cellmates unconscious. The next morning, Jensen goes to the Chaos Hall for breakfast. He is observed by Coach, Gunner, and Lists, who recognizes Jensen as a former record-holding driver who ruined his career. The hall falls silent when Pachenko and his friend approach Jensen to provoke him, first by spitting on his food, then calling him a woman killer and a child abuser. Jensen reacts by attacking Pachenko, but they're interrupted by guards, who drag Jensen to meet Claire Hennessy, the prison warden. Hennessy knows Jensen's record and recognizes him as an exceptional driver. She makes him an offer. She wants him to become the new Frankenstein. The real Frankenstein died on the operating table after his last race, but no one knows this yet, so anyone could replace him under the mask. Frankenstein was a beloved legend and a source of inspiration, which is why Hennessy doesn't want the world to know he's dead. She needs the legend to continue to boost ratings, which have plummeted since Frank's death. According to the rules, winning 5 races earns a prisoner their freedom. Since Frankenstein already won 4 races, Jensen would only need to win 1 more. Jensen is hesitant to risk his life for this, but Hennessy threatens him with solitary confinement if he refuses, ensuring he can't reveal her secret. Jensen has no other choice but to go along with him. Afterward, he's taken to the prison's auto shop, where he's introduced to Coach and his men, who are the mechanics in charge of Frankenstein's car and will guide Jensen through the basics. Each team has its own pit, and nobody helps each other. There's also a giant shop where Hennessy has been building something in secret for a month. The only ones that will know Jensen is the new Frankenstein are his team and very few guards, because Hennessy's power over the prison is absolute. Then Coach shows him the car he'll be driving, a modified Mustang V8 Fastback. It comes with a variety of both defensive and offensive gadgets, but it doesn't get loaded with ammo until race day so that prisoners can't use it to try to escape. It's impossible to do so anyway, because the prison is on an island, so the only way out is through a small bridge that would get swarmed with police cars and helicopters at the first indication of prison break. Once Jensen has acquainted himself with the car, he and the team continue their chat at the prison's backyard. The race has 3 stages. During the first 2, he must try to get rid of as many opponents as he can, and during the third one, the key is speed to make it to the finish line. All drivers count with a navigator companion, which are girls brought from the women's facility. The one exception to this rule is Joe, who prefers to have a fellow team member as navigator instead of a girl because he goes through them so fast, it makes the audience squeamish. List starts telling Jensen about the most important drivers then, who are all in the yard with them. There's 14K, a Triad member and MIT graduate, Hector Grimm, a certified psychopath that worships Hennessy, Slovo Pachenko, leader of the Aryan Brotherhood in the prison, and Travis Colt, a disgraced ex-NASCAR superstar. Their talk is suddenly interrupted when Joe and his team come over to insult Jensen and leave a message for Frankenstein saying this race is only between the two of them. At the moment, a van brings back some inmates that have been doing work detail, and Jensen notices something peculiar on their wrists. They have GPS tracking bracelets, and seeing them makes him realize the man that killed his wife was wearing one as well. When the day for the first race stage finally comes, Jensen is given Frank's clothes, mask, and even his ring to wear, and his mere presence brings back all the viewers the show had lost. Coach tells him not to talk to the other drivers because Frank didn't, it was part of his mystique, but he's allowed to take off his mask inside the car because the windows are made of mirrored glass and Case also knows the secret. While getting ready, Jensen asks her what she's in prison for, and she admits having killed a cop for being a bad husband to her. The race starts a moment later, and since weapons don't activate until the second of 3 laps, the beginning isn't very violent, although the drivers still try to push each other off the track. Thanks to Case's knowledge of the area, it's easy for Jensen to go head-to-head with Joe at the very front, managing to pass him into first place when Case points out a shortcut he can take. It's then that Hennessy turns on the shield and weapons, which are manholes on the ground that a driver needs to go over with all 4 wheels to activate their car gadgets. Soon there is open fire on the track, and when Hennessy activates the Death Heads too, Grimm kills a minor driver by pushing his car against it. He also causes Joe to fall behind after shooting oil at his car, but he loses the race when 14K pushes him off track with a missile and Joe runs him over. Meanwhile, Jensen manages to activate the weapons, but the machine gun gets stuck, so Case gets on the hood of the car to fix it, causing the others to concentrate their bullets on her. Jensen's skills allow him to dodge them all though, and Case returns safely to the passenger seat afterward. Jensen steals a defense manhole from Colt, but as it happened to Frank, none of his defense systems will work, and the rear shield won't survive much longer. Luckily, Jensen thinks of a plan on the spot. He makes Case unhook the napalm and sit on his lap, so he can launch her chair with the napalm on it. It's Colt's car that gets hit, and now that it's covered with napalm, Case throws the car's lighter at it, lighting it on fire and getting him off the race. With Colt gone, Jensen goes head-to-head with Joe again, but he is suddenly distracted by Pachenko, who makes the same hand gesture the man that killed his wife made at him before leaving. Joe takes advantage of this and pushes Jensen's car back, causing him to come last while Pachenko gets first place. 3 drivers are dead, and 6 remain for the second stage. After the race, Coach and his men check the car and notice the gadgets are working properly, so it doesn't explain why they wouldn't activate when they had to. Jensen goes to see Hennessy to tell her he won't race anymore because he knows Pachenko killed his wife and all this has been a setup to frame him so she could get a new driver to replace Frankenstein. She doesn't admit to it, but she does show him a picture of his daughter in the foster home she's gone to, reminding Jensen that he should play along if he wants to see his daughter again. Not being able to do anything about it, Jensen goes back to the yard, where he chats with Coach and asks him why he doesn't wear a number. Coach explains he is technically not a prisoner anymore, he qualified for parole 3 years ago, but he couldn't bring himself to cross the gate. The world had changed too much, and he preferred the familiarity of the races. He also doesn't believe Jensen killed his wife. Later in the evening, while working on the car, Jensen sees Pachenko passing by and decides to follow him to his pit, where he gets captured by Pachenko's team. He punches Jensen a couple of times before grabbing a heavy tool to smash his head, not caring if he has Hennessy's protection, but he's stopped by Lists, who stabs him on his back with a pen. Jensen takes advantage of the distraction to grab a metal shard from the ground and stab his captor, then he knocks him and his friend out before going after Pachenko. He punches him, throws him around, and hits him with various boxes until Pachenko admits Hennessy made him kill his wife and Ulrich was the one to take him there. When Jensen gets ready to kill him in revenge, Ulrich shows up with another guard and stops the fight. The next day, right before the second stage of the race begins, Pachenko teases Jensen by making the same hand gesture at him. However, Jensen doesn't fall for the provocation. In fact, he starts driving slowly on purpose and takes a tunnel so he can talk to Case in private. He wonders if she killed Frank because he finds it suspicious that the car's gadgets malfunctioned 2 races in a row, and he threatens her to expel her off the car if she doesn't answer. Case admits having sabotaged Frank's rear weapons because Hennessy would reward her with her freedom. The goal was never to kill Frank though, that was an accident caused by him still trying to win with no weapons. Hennessy's goal was to make him lose to keep him in prison, racing for the public. Now that he has his answer, Jensen speeds up and easily slides back into the race, ignoring Joe for now. His objective this time is Pachenko. After the two of them unsuccessfully try to push each other off the track, Jensen drives ahead and takes the weapons manhole instead of defense. This confuses everyone because the weapons are at the front of the car, so Jensen surprises them by suddenly turning the car around and opening fire on Pachenko while driving backward. After he's damaged the other car enough, he turns around again and hits the smoke, causing Pachinko to crash against a concrete barrier. Then Jensen stops his car and gets out to approach Pachinko and break his neck as revenge for his killing his wife. Between this and Joe deciding to change his navigator in the middle of the race, Hennessy decides it's the right moment to release the thing she's been building all this time, a multi-weapon tanker truck called Dreadnought. This truck is incredibly powerful and quickly catches up with the drivers, immediately killing 2 minor competitors. Since it belongs to the warden, it also has the benefit of being allowed inside the buildings, which lets it take a shortcut and appear at the front of the race. The Dreadnought slowly kills 14K's navigator before grabbing his car with chains and shooting at it until it explodes, which means only Jensen and Joe are left. There is no way they can defeat such a monster without a proper plan, so Jensen asks Liz to connect his communicator to Joe's car and they agree to work together. They flank the truck with their cars, doing their best to dodge any incoming attacks, and when a trap manhole appears in front of them, each of them hits it with 2 wheels, getting the 4 needed to activate it. This causes the tap to come up and the truck to crash against it. Now the second stage of the race is over, and Jensen and Joe will be the only drivers making it to the third. Later in the evening, Joe comes over to Jensen's pit to point out his voice suspiciously sounds a lot like Frank's, but he doesn't push for answers. Meanwhile, Ulrich and Hennessy decide that they need to kill Jensen since the Frankenstein mask can still be worn by someone else in the future. The following day, before the race starts, Ulrich puts a bomb under Jensen's car while Hennessy distracts everyone with a speech about racing being their life's purpose. When Hennessy mentions this might be the first time someone could win their freedom with a 5th victory, Jensen realizes the races are rigged to prevent anyone from winning a 5th race. That's why no one has ever achieved it before, and he concludes he won't be allowed to win today either. Coach overhears this and later, back in the auto shop, shows Jensen an important detail from a video of Grimm's death. This gives Jensen an idea for a plan, and he asks Liszt to add a half-gallon reserve tank to his car before heading to Joe's pit to ask him to collaborate again. While Jensen changes into Frankenstein's gear, Hennessy visits him, handing over his release papers and making a new offer. If he wins, she wants him to stay in prison and continue as Frankenstein. She argues the track is where he belongs, claiming he isn't daddy material, and that an ex-con couldn't give his daughter a good life. Staying, she says, would be an act of selfless love. Jensen joins the race without answering her but tucks the release papers into his pocket. As he gets into his car, Case admits Hennessy also spoke to her, ordering her to stop Jensen if he's about to win. However, Jensen remains unfazed. When the race begins, Ulrich manipulates the manholes so they only activate when Joe drives over them. He then fires at Jensen, damaging his back shield so badly that Jensen decides to drop it. Joe easily avoids it, having learned the trick when Frank used it before. Hennessy activates a defensive manhole for Jensen to use, trying to keep the audience engaged, but Joe launches a rocket at it, destroying it. Joe fires all his remaining rockets at Jensen, who dodges them, letting the missiles hit a weakened wall. This is the same wall that collapsed when Grimm died, already unstable from that explosion. Jensen and Joe have been carefully calculating their attacks to target this weak spot. The rockets strike it, creating a hole that allows them to escape the prison. Furious, Hennessy ends the live stream and sends all available cops after them, pressing the bomb detonator, but nothing happens. Coach and his team had already removed and deactivated the bomb from Jensen's car. Joe and Jensen reach the bridge, but police cars are closing in. It's time for the next part of the plan. Jensen releases the extra half-gallon reserve tank, which hits the pursuing cars, causing an explosion and a wall of fire that blocks further pursuit. Both convicts cross the bridge gates and split up, taking different roads so the helicopters focus solely on Jensen, the more significant target. As Joe drives away, Case agrees to help Jensen with the final phase of the plan. She owes it to Frank, and since Hennessy gave her the release papers, she'll be free regardless. Near some construction cranes, Jensen jumps out of the car under their shadow and hides while Case takes his place at the wheel. She drives only a few miles before the helicopters force her to stop with a wall of fire. When she exits the car with her hands up, she's wearing Frankenstein's clothes and mask. Since most people don't know about the identity swap, the cops arrest her and take her back to prison, allowing Jensen to escape and meet Joe. Together, they board a freight train. Back in the prison office, Ulrich congratulates Hennessy, saying the ratings are through the roof and gifts are already arriving. Hennessy opens the gift box Ulrich brought and finds the bomb he had placed under Jensen's car. It explodes, killing them both. Outside on the track, Coach is seen pressing the detonator. 6 months later, Joe and Jensen have started a new life in Santa Rosalia, Mexico. They run their own auto shop as mechanics, and Jensen has regained custody of his daughter. Case visits them after her release papers are finally processed, bringing a racing car for them to check out. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.